Resourceful Designer, episode 270. Confidence always beats knowledge. Well, almost.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. His fingers often type faster than his mind can think, causing him to make stupid errors. Mark Dickhout.
Come on. I know I'm not the only one who does that. And you know the crazy part? Anytime I notice that I make one of those errors, and then I go back and delete in order to retype it, I often end up making the exact same error a second time around, or a third time. The word design is a prime example of that. I can't tell you how many times I've ended up typing the word desing instead of design, only to delete it and then retype desing all over again. It's like my fingers are going too fast to be able to realize what letter the order or what order the letters are supposed to go in. Stupid fingers. Anyways, moving along. In this week's podcast episode, I'm going to talk about the power of confidence and how it can help your design business grow more than you think. After that conversation, I'm going to share an email tip that you are going to want to stick around for. Not only will this tip benefit you and your clients, but can also save you from a potential lawsuit, so don't miss it. Now, before I do get to today's main topic, I want to ask you a favor. Ever since the pandemic started, my podcast download numbers have dropped. I've been told by many people how they used to enjoy listening to me on their commutes, but once their commute was gone, they found it harder and harder to find time to consume podcasts, and I understand that. And I'm hoping that once things settle down, as they're starting to do in many places around the world, those people will once again start listening to Resourceful Designer. And that's great. I look forward to them coming back and to my download numbers going up again. But what would make me even happier is if those download numbers went up because of new listeners tuning in. And that's where you come in. You're probably friends or at least acquaintances with fellow designers. Would you please mention the podcast to them and tell them the value that you get from listening to Resourceful Designer? Let them know that they can find the podcast on any platform that they listen to or consume audio from. Or they can also download the app from either the iOS, Apple App Store, or the Google App Store. Now, another thing that you can do to help me out is leave a review for the podcast. Now, reviews don't help with podcast discovery. They won't make it easier for people to find the podcast, but they do help with social proof. Whenever somebody does find Resourceful Designer, they may look at the reviews to see what other people are saying about the show. And the more positive reviews they see, the more inclined they'll be to give the show a listen. And that's all I can ask, is that they give it a listen. Now, Apple Podcasts is the best place to leave a review for the show, but if you're not an Apple Podcast user, or even if you are, you can also leave reviews on Stitcher, on Podchaser, or CastBox, or anywhere else that allows you to leave reviews. Every little bit helps. And I thank you in advance for your effort in helping me grow Resourceful Designer. Now, on with the show. Confidence always beats knowledge. Or almost. We are lucky that we chose a profession where confidence beats knowledge. Now, before I dive deeper into that, let's first have a look at what confidence is. According to dictionary.com, confidence is the belief in oneself and one's powers or abilities. Confidence is what's center stage when you say, I can do this. Confidence is what drives you when you say, I can figure this out. And confidence is the ladder that you climb when you say, I can succeed. Without confidence, your goals, your intentions, your ambitions, you might as well call them dreams, because that's all they are and all they'll ever be if you don't believe in yourself and your abilities. I fully believe that without some form of confidence, you cannot succeed as a design business owner. Now, I'm not talking about being a designer. There are many designers out there, good designers, who lack confidence in themselves. I know several, and I've actually worked with designers who fall in this category. And that's fine. They're good at what they do, and they're not design business owner material. But that's what I'm talking about, running your own design business. Being a freelancer, if that's what you want to call yourself. Although you can go back to listen to episode 17 of the podcast to hear why I think calling yourself a freelancer is a bad idea, but I digress. confidence. You want to succeed in business. You need it. But what about knowledge? Don't you need knowledge to succeed? Well, that's kind of a trick question. The definition of knowledge, according to dictionary.com, is an acquaintance with facts, truths, or principles as from study or investigation. Acquaintance. What an interesting word to use. Most of the time, when you think of acquaintance or acquaintances, you think of people you know of, but don't necessarily know. You understand what I'm trying to say? I consider Betty, the cashier at the grocery store where I go and do all my groceries every week, I consider her an acquaintance. I know her, she knows me by name, we exchange pleasantries every time I get to her checkout. If we run into each other somewhere else in town other than the grocery store, we smile at each other and say hi, but that's the extent of our interaction. We're acquaintances. Now, Merriam-Webster, a different dictionary, defines knowledge as the fact or condition of being aware of something. Being aware of something? That's all that's required, according to this dictionary, in order to have knowledge? So, according to two different reputable sources that are experts on the meaning of all things, I mean, they're dictionaries after all, knowledge doesn't mean knowing something. It just means being acquainted or aware of something. And when you think of the definition in that way, you realize that you don't actually need to know something to succeed. What you need is confidence in your ability to seek that knowledge, to become acquainted with it, to become aware of it. Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of times when knowledge trumps confidence. If I'm about to have surgery, yes, I want a confident surgeon, but I hope that his or her knowledge of the procedure they're about to perform supersedes that confidence. Or if I'm about to go on a trip, I'm less interested in how confident the pilot is. I want someone who knows how to fly the plane in the cockpit. But when it comes to design or running a design business, confidence beats knowledge. Now, you probably don't remember, but there was a time in your life when you were very, very young, when you didn't even know how to walk. You crawled around on all fours, or maybe you were one of those babies who does the butt drags that you see on those funny videos. But regardless, one day, after spending your entire life up to that point so far on the ground, you got up and walked. At one time, you didn't know how to ride a bike. Then one day you did. You didn't know how to swim. Then one day you did. This applies to hundreds, or I should say thousands, of accomplishments in your life. You didn't know how to do something until you did. I remember when my kids were young, anytime they would get frustrated, as kids do, and say, "I can't do this," I would calmly correct them by saying, "It's not that you can't do it. You just don't know how to do it yet." And once they learned, I would remind them of how they felt before their accomplishment. And they realized that the statement of, "I can't do this," was true. It's just they weren't able to do it yet, but now they can. Okay, well, that's a very roundabout way to get to my point of running a design business. Confidence beats knowledge. But what does this mean? It means that you don't need to know how to do something before taking on the task. You just have to be confident that you can figure it out. Now, I admit, I didn't always feel this way. Back in 2006, I was approached by our local library to design a new website for them. They had heard good things about me from other people around town, and they had decided that Mark's the person we want to work with. So this wasn't a quote or a bid. They were hiring me to design their website. And this was going to be a huge project. In fact, to be honest, I was a little bit intimidated when I found out their budget for the website was $50,000. That was more than I made in an entire year back then on this one project. Now, the library wanted their new website to be connected to their catalog of books. They wanted visitors to the website to be able to tell what books they carried, if those books were currently available or checked out, and if checked out, when they would be back. And they also wanted members to be able to reserve and check out and put on hold books while they were on the website. All the typical things that you expect of a library's website today. But in 2006, not many libraries had integrated catalogs on their website. Now, I knew enough about websites to know that this was way beyond my capabilities. At the time, I was hand-coding websites in HTML and CSS. Now, I originally started designing websites in two WYSIWYG programs called PageMill and StoryMill. Some of you old-timers may remember those. Well, the company who made those two programs was later acquired by Adobe, who eventually discontinued them in favor of GoLive, and it became my platform of choice. And GoLive was a really good program for the time. But then Adobe started concentrating more on Dreamweaver, and GoLive kind of fell behind and became more buggy to the point where it was almost unusable. Now, rumor had it that Adobe was going to discontinue GoLive altogether, and having already heard mixed things about Dreamweaver, with some people having issues or not liking it, I decided to forego that route and chose to start hand-coding websites myself. I already knew some HTML and some CSS, but I dove in and learned it a lot more, and then I started building websites from scratch for my clients. Well, when the library website project came along, I knew that HTML and CSS wouldn't cut it. This website required a database and therefore needed PHP and MySQL. The problem was, I didn't know either of those. So I immediately started trying to learn it. Now, I know that was wishful thinking that I could learn PHP and MySQL in time to build this website for the library. But that was what I was trying to do. The problem was, I couldn't wrap my brain around the concepts in PHP. Where HTML and CSS were so easy for me to learn, it was like second nature, it just made sense. PHP left me stumped. No matter how many books I read, and I bought and have a whole bunch of books on PHP, or how many courses I took, and I remember lynda.com back then was my go-to, and I got several courses on PHP that I went through. But no matter how much I tried, I just couldn't grasp the concept. Maybe it was the pressure back then that I was under in order to learn it so quickly so I can start on the website. I don't know. And to this day, I still don't understand PHP and how to connect it with MySQL. But eventually, I just gave up. Now, you may be thinking, well, you gave up trying to learn it, Mark, but you gave it a good shot. That's okay. At least you can hire someone to do that part for you. Well, I kick myself to this day for not thinking of that in 2006. No, that's not right. In fact, I did think of it. I just didn't have the confidence back then to follow through. I didn't know what to do. I realized that I didn't have the skills required for the project, but I didn't know how to go about finding someone to help me. I was a one-man show. The idea of having somebody else working with me was a foreign concept at the time. And places like Upwork's former halves, Elance and Odesk, yes, they were around back then, but I wasn't aware of them or of any other online platform that I could turn to hire that sort of help. So, backed into a corner, I did the only thing I thought I could do. I contacted the library and told them that, regretfully, I couldn't take on their project. I turned down a $50,000 project. Now, several months later, with their brand new website up and running, I talked to my contact at the library, and he told me who they had hired to do the job. And I was shocked. I knew the person they had hired. And I also knew, or I thought I knew, that they were not much better at web design than I was. So how did they pull off this project? Well, I ran into them shortly after that point, and I asked them flat out, how did you manage to do the library project? And, well, you guessed it. They created the design, the look of the website, then they handed that off to somebody, a programmer or developer, who actually did all the coding. They told me that it cost them $12,000 to hire somebody to do the job. Presuming they were being paid the same $50,000 that I had been offered, that meant that they made $38,000 for designing the look of a website and then handing it off to somebody else to do all the work. And I lost out on that opportunity because of my lack of confidence. And that lesson taught me a lot. One, I was an idiot for not thinking of hiring somebody else. But most importantly, two, I lacked the confidence from the moment I was presented with the website project. I didn't know if I could do it. I tried to learn PHP and MySQL, but I failed. And I figured that I didn't have the knowledge, and therefore I couldn't handle the job. And I learned that if I wanted to succeed in this business of running my own design business, I would need to rectify that problem. Now, I'm happy to say that since that fateful day, I have never turned down a job for lack of knowledge. When a client now asks me to do something, and it's something that I'm either unaware of or flat out don't know how to do, I still answer with confidence that, yeah, I can get the job done. And once I have the project, I will figure out either how to do it myself or find somebody to do it for me. Confidence beats knowledge. Now, it's great to be able to hire a contractor when you need one. We're lucky that there are so many options that offer great talent for just about anything you can think of these days. But nothing beats learning how to do something yourself. You know that old saying, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach a man a fish and he'll eat for a lifetime? Providing he likes fish, that is, but the same concept applies to us. I love hiring and working with contractors to help me out. I've worked with some great people over the years on some wonderful projects. But given the opportunity, I would much prefer learn the skills and do the job myself. Most of the time, there's certain skills that I really don't want to learn, but sometimes I would prefer do it myself than find somebody else. And there are ways that you can do that, even while working on a client job. If you're not sure how to do something that the client's asking for, chances are that there's some blog article or maybe a YouTube video out that will walk you through it step by step. I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to do one particular thing and just call up YouTube and say, okay, how do I do this? And I see dozens of videos explaining it. Pick one, walk through it. Oh, that's how I do it. And then I go ahead and do it. But sometimes it might not always be a good idea to test these things on a client project. And that's why it's a good idea to be your own guinea pig. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I design websites in WordPress, specifically using the Divi builder from Element Themes. And just a quick side note here, Elegant Themes Summer Sale is going on right now. It's one of their biggest sales of the year. So if you've been thinking of trying Divi or getting on board with that, or if you've already purchased like the regular license and want to upgrade to a lifetime, you still have a couple of days at the time this episode comes out to take advantage of the sale. Visit resourcefuldesigner.com/Divi sale to take advantage of it. Anyways, I build websites in WordPress using Divi. However, I just told you how I was hand coding websites for clients. I remember in the early 2010s, fellow web designers would tell me that, oh, Mark, you should try WordPress. It's great. It's so easy. It saves you so much time. However, I had a strong aversion towards WordPress. To me, the fact that WordPress used pre-designed themes was an affront to designers. There was no way I was going to build a website for a client using someone else's design. But in 2013, as I was getting into podcasting, I was told that I needed a WordPress website in order to generate the RSS feed that was required for the podcast. So, very reluctantly, I installed WordPress on my hosting platform, and I bought a theme from Elegant Themes. Actually, the theme I bought was called Evolution. I bought that from Elegant Themes. This was before they came out with Divi, by the way. In fact, a friend of mine, the guy who was actually helping me get started in podcasting, he had an affiliate link to Elegant Themes back then. So kind of as a way to repay him for his kindness in helping me out, I opted to buy the lifetime deal, even though I only needed one theme, and I had no plans on building any WordPress websites beyond my own. I mean, come on, this was WordPress. Well, that decision to buy a lifetime deal may have changed the course of my life, but I'll talk about that more in a moment. So I built my first WordPress website, and I had to admit, there was a lot more flexibility in WordPress than I originally thought. The theme did restrain me somewhat, but at least I can control how each individual part of the theme looked. I could change the fonts, I can change the colors, I can change the content. So I had some control, even though I had no control over the layout itself. And I suppose if I knew how to code, I could have, but using the theme as is, I couldn't control the layout of where things sat on the page. But I made my way through it and launched the website in June of 2013. Well, in December of that same year, Elegant Themes released Divi. And it changed my view of WordPress. Since I already had a lifetime deal to Elegant Themes, it cost me nothing to test out Divi. By the way, I'll include a link in the show notes for this episode for the original release that Elegant Themes put out, the blog stating that Divi was out and everything it can do. So if you're a Divi user or just curious to see in 2013 how they announced it, I'll have a link in the show notes. But Divi was a game changer. Here was a theme that gave me full control, not only on how each element of the website looked, but how each element was laid out on the screen. I could put things where I wanted, how I wanted them, the size that I wanted them, the whole bit. I could make a website look how I wanted the website to look, not like how some other theme designer wanted a website to look. Now, I tested Divi out on a dummy website. I just created a website to try it out, and I really, really liked it, the way it worked. And I dove in and I did all sorts of stuff with it in order to really kick the tires and see, is it really worth it? I was so impressed that the next client web project that I had, the next time a client contacted me, with newfound confidence in my abilities to make WordPress websites, I made the leap to designing in WordPress and Divi. And I haven't looked back. If I hadn't tested out WordPress on my own website and then Divi on a dummy site, I probably never would have made that switch. And that was just one example. There's been many times since then when I've used myself as a guinea pig to test things out and build my confidence. It might be new software or maybe new features in existing software. I'll test them out on my own projects before I ever try anything for a client's thing. But building that confidence allowed me to start offering services that I never previously offered, or taking on projects that I had never done before and that I might not have had an idea of how to do. Working on stuff for myself gave me the confidence to use that newfound knowledge on client work. Even today, I recently started building a website for a personal project that I'm doing. It's not design related, it's just something else, and I need a website for it. And even though I'm a devoted Divi fan since day one, I actually decided to build my new website using Elementor. Why? Because I know the day will come when a client will ask me to take over a website that was built using Elementor. These page builders are becoming more and more popular, and it's inevitable that one of these days, a client will say, Mark, I want you to take over my website. Here it is. And I'll see, oh, it uses Elementor. So why not get my feet wet on a project of my own choosing so that when the time comes, I'll be more confident and I'll have a better understanding of what it is I'm working with. So yes, I'm gaining the knowledge, but the knowledge is not enough. I need the confidence to be able to say, yeah, I could take on your Elementor website, no problem. Now, in FYI, I'm still really early in the Elementor journey. I haven't gone very far, but I can see how a lot of people like it. In some ways, it's very much like Divi, but in other ways, they have some differences, and each one has their pros and cons. I don't think it'll ever pull me away from Divi. I'm too invested in it, but it's nice to know that I can confidently work in Elementor if I need to. It's the same way I still use Quark Express. A lot of people shake their head at that. Even though I have InDesign as part of my Creative Cloud package and I have a working knowledge of InDesign, I can work in it if need be, I still prefer working in Quark Express. It's because of my confidence. I'm more confident working in Quark Express than I am working in InDesign, even though I have a knowledge of both programs. So all of this to say that without confidence, I don't believe that you can get very far as a design business owner. It's nice to have knowledge, and I'll even say it's necessary to have knowledge, but it's the confidence in yourself and in what you can do with that knowledge that will propel you forward. Look at any successful freelancer that you know and you'll see that they exude confidence. That's the secret to their success. And that's what you need to strive for, because confidence always beats knowledge, or at least almost always. Now, speaking of confidence, I see it growing every day with the members of the Resourceful Designer community. I'm not saying that the people in the community lacked confidence before they joined, but it's evident that their confidence has grown since joining. People like Sierra, who is a great designer, but was fairly new to designing websites. Well, she joined the community and she asked lots of questions. We gave her tons of advice and help, and now she's kicking it in her web design abilities. She's still learning, but she has the confidence to move forward and try new things out. And that's propelling her and her business. Or Zach, who is a founding member of the community. When Zach first joined, he was in the process of just setting up his design business. He had no clients or anything. It took him some time to figure out exactly what he wanted to do. But now Zach has found himself a niche that he loves and is not only designing, he's also performing brand audits for organizations in his niche. His confidence has soared since I first met him. Or Mike, another founding member. Now, Mike didn't lack confidence or knowledge when he joined. When he became a member, he was doing quite well running his small design business. But since he joined, his confidence in what he can do and what he needs assistance with has helped him grow his design business into a small design agency. And Mike is killing it. Now, I can go on and on with stories of other members, but suffice it to say, week after week, I see the confidence grow in every member of the community. And as their confidence grows, so does their success. Doesn't that sound like something you want to be a part of? Now, membership in the community is limited. I'm only allowing 50 people in the community, and then I'm closing the doors. I will never allow more than 50 people in at a time. So don't miss your opportunity to join. If you're looking for a boost in confidence or just people to help you to grow your business, you want to be a member. Visit resourcefuldesigner.com/community and join today. Your future self will thank you. Now, as I promised at the beginning, I have a tip of the week you'll want to pay attention to. Let me ask you a question. Is an email a contract? Last month, a Mississippi court took an interesting case looking at what it takes to make a contract by email. Spoiler alert, doesn't take much. As you know, a contract is just another word to describe an agreement. So when you exchange emails with someone and you come to terms of a deal that you both agree on, you are making a contract. Now, in the Mississippi court case, the two parties had done just that. They had agreed on terms for the sale of some equipment in a series of back and forth emails. Now, here's the tricky part. One of the parties, Jordan, who was selling the equipment, proposed the initial offer from his computer email, which included his name and contact details all in the signature. The other party, Parrish, the one purchasing the equipment, countered the offer. But when responding to the counteroffer, Jordan, the one selling, he did so on his iPhone, sending a message saying, "Let's do it." The trouble is, from his iPhone, the message had no signature other than "sent from iPhone." Well, it ends up that Jordan ended up selling the goods to another buyer at a higher price. So Parrish sued Jordan for breach of contract. But Jordan claimed that there was no valid signature to his emails where he agreed to the deal. Therefore, it was not enforceable as an agreement. Now, the trial court agreed, and the appeals court affirmed that decision. But the Mississippi Supreme Court found the state's Uniform Electronic Transfer Act, the UETA, permitted contracts to be formed by electronic means such as emails. Then, the court stated that the determination of whether an email was electronically signed pursuant to the UETA was a question of fact that turned on a party's intent to adopt or accept the writing, and is therefore a question for the finder of facts, in other words, the jury. So because there exists a genuine factual question about Jordan's intent, the court reversed and remanded for further proceedings. Anyways, that's a lot of legal talk and it may sound confusing, but the takeaway to this is emails can be the basis for an enforceable contract. So you need to be careful in the wording of your messages. Even something as simple as sounds good could be deemed sufficient enough to bind you to the contract. If you consider your emails merely preliminary to a formal written contract on paper, you need to say so. Add something to the signature of your email, such as, "This email message is preliminary and shall not constitute a binding agreement, which may only be made in a formal written memorandum executed by all parties." Adding a simple line such as that to the bottom of your email can save you a lot of trouble should a client ever try to hold you accountable for something mentioned in an email that was outside of the actual contract. So this is a case of cover your butt. It's so easy to add an extra little line at the bottom of the email that states, hey, we can talk and agree on all sorts of stuff here, but this is not a contract. Until we actually sign on the dotted line on a printed contract, none of this is actually binding. Because otherwise, if you don't have something like that and you somehow don't follow through with something you mentioned in an email, the client can come back and sue you for it. So I thought that was a really interesting case when I heard about it, and I said this is worth sharing on the podcast. So that's this week's tip of the week. Makes you think, doesn't it? Well, that's it for me. I want to thank you if you're still listening at this point. I really do appreciate you listening to the end. And remember that I would love for you to share the podcast with a fellow designer. Help me grow my numbers. And I thank you for it. Until next time, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the confidence in growing your design business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.